Well, Reform UK have been setting out today their plan to undo policies to make the UK economy net zero, including targeting subsidies for renewable energy. We're joined now by Reform UK's deputy leader. I'm keen to talk about the net zero policy, but it feels right to start with the story we've been leading on this evening, which is that phone call between Putin and Trump, the beginning of the negotiations to end the Ukraine war. But I guess the question on everyone's lips is, at what price? I mean, are we in a situation where Ukraine is just going to have to, in your view, just give up land to Russia?
Well, at the end of the day, almost all wars end by the opposing sides talking. And President Trump has started that talking. And if the call was 90 minutes, clearly quite a lot was discussed. You've reported there what Secretary Hegseth was saying. And we all know that President Trump negotiates from a significant sort of one end of the spectrum. Who knows where it'll end up? But everybody wants the war, the killing to stop, the cost to stop. And President Trump made that very clearly when he was being elected. So we shouldn't be surprised by any of this. But I would take a different stance from your previous correspondent.
Dominic Waghorn.
In that I think very often things are not quite what they seem.
You say that when you're negotiating, you start at one point and then you move to the middle. Some people would say he's already starting pretty close to what Vladimir Putin would want right now.
The first mistake to make.
Just explain to me, because just setting it out how, he's
well, there's multiple, clearly.
Just let me explain, because he's saying, that Ukraine won't have NATO membership and that Ukraine will not be able to go to the 2014, pre-2014 borders. So that, some people would say...
There's two elements to that. The first element of that is that the difficulty with NATO and Article 5 is that you get much closer to a bump point where you're in danger of having NATO fighting Russia, and clearly that has horrific consequences and potential risks. The second thing, with regard to the 2014 border, well, I don't think anybody seriously... I mean, Crimea's been part of Russia for that period of time. No one really thought that... seriously thought that you were going to change Crimea.
Was fighting to try and get it, wasn't it?
Of course.
April,
and in a sense,
they had a
understandably, but at the end of the day, most wars end with some form of compromise deal and involve difficult compromises, just like we had difficult compromises in Northern Ireland. This stuff is really difficult, but at the end of the day, I think, and you want to negotiate from a position of strength, and that was part of the success of what Ukraine did, insurging into Russia.
You talked there about the difficulty of Article 5 and avoiding that direct confrontation. I guess my question is, if you're Ukraine, you're going to want some kind of guarantee that Russia isn't just going to come back in, right? Not US troops, that's what Trump has said, not NATO. So what do you think the UK should provide peacekeeping forces?
But you haven't thought about, your colleague didn't talk about, well, OK, so...
Sorry, you can put it on me, it's fine.
If the US is saying, we don't want to put troops on the ground, but then there's an obvious, OK, but can we have some money for some kit? Can we have an Iron Dome system? Other sorts of ways of providing an effective security and defence guarantee that is all in the mix of the negotiation. We're just at the beginning of all of this. All of these things have to be on the table.
Do you think that we should spend 5% of GDP on defence, as Donald Trump wants?
Look, at the end of the day, we used to spend big numbers like that. Based on our current economy and the way we spend money at the moment, that is clearly not possible.
So it's not possible, you don't think, to spend 5%
based on the
GDP?
current situation. In our contract, we were saying we've got to get to 3% in 6 years' time. And that is, given everything that's going on in the world, that is absolutely...
Is he being unrealistic, do you think, then, by saying 5%?
At the end of the day, President Trump will always negotiate very aggressively. And if you want people to settle at 3, you don't start at 3, you start at 5.
OK. Right, let's talk about your net zero announcement, shall we? I was quite struck by one part of your policy, which was saying that farmers who use their land for solar panels should be subject to a special tax upon their death. I thought you were the guys out and about defending farmers against
Absolutely, we are defending. So we would abolish, as we had in our contract, abolish all inheritance tax, including the dreadful family farm tax. But you can't have it both ways. You can't double dip. So there should be no inheritance tax on farmers. But if farmers who decide they don't want to be involved in providing food security, they actually want to sell out to the renewable pound, well, then they've taken their money up front, so to speak. they've given up food security, and therefore they wouldn't benefit from that inheritance
Do you think
tax
they're
relief.
like exploiting subsidies by putting solar panels on their farms? Is that what you think they're doing?
We want to get rid of all subsidies. We want to recover that money. That's the key part of our policy. We'd have a windfall tax to recover the subsidies, give or take 10 billion a year. So it's a special windfall tax on all the renewables, including the likes of wind, solar, Drax power station. And then we're also having a ban on these very dangerous battery energy storage systems that people are not focusing on.
I guess just to go back finally to the solar panel one, I'm just really struck by, you're scrapping all inheritance tax, apart from on farmers who have solar panels on their land.
Because they've already taken...
I'm trying to work out why you're singling out farmers with solar. Do you think it's morally wrong to have solar panels on farmland?
Because you can't benefit twice, right? You can't double dip. So if you take the renewable pound up front, early doors, and you give up on food security, you've already had your money up front.
So why are solar panels the only thing that you pay inheritance tax on?
Because let's put solar panels on the roofs of homes and sheds, not on productive farmland, including in my constituency of Boston and Skegness.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Richard Tice speaking to us there.